Hey guys, it's Fred and Sheila McCoy, Hatfield McCoy Museum, Liberty, Kentucky. FredMcCoy.com. Sheila's behind the camera.
Hi guys, hope you're having a great night.
We have had a little break. My back is doing better.
We're back.
And we're almost finished moving.
Yeah.
Like I said, we've sold our house. We put an apartment over top of the museum. And that's where we're going to be living. I was watching a segment a while ago of a video. I don't watch people's videos. Hang on, just keep it right there. Let me turn this thing off.
Oh, y'all forgot. Sorry.
I'm afraid that
there you go. That sounds a lot better.
Carry over into the video. I don't watch a lot of segments on things except for Hatfield McCoy. When it's dealing with the Hatfields and McCoys, we watch them. Anything else that doesn't interest me. So there was one come on a while ago about bad Frank Phillips. And guys, if you would, you can follow along with us here. All you got to do is Google bad Frank. And when you do it, probably the first thing that's going to come up there is Wikitree. Mm-hmm. And if you remember, if you've seen our video on Jim Vance the other day, where they put the new monument up and they had all this stuff, and we were talking about Wikitree, Wikipedia, all these different sites that you can go to, and this person, they was going over Frank Phillips, and when I Googled Frank Phillips, bad Frank, of course, Wikitree's the first one that comes up, and it's verbatim, word for word, what this person was saying about Frank Phillips. I mean, it was just word for word reading Wikipedia. Where does Wikipedia get their information? Anybody that wants to submit it, I can put on there right now, Fred McCoy served in the Civil War, and it'll show up, Fred McCoy served in the Civil War under Fred McCoy. Anybody that wants to put anything. So here's you another victim to Wikipedia or Wikitree. Another victim, another person has fell victim to this. And by going over what's on Wikitree, they done nothing more than spoke a lot of nonsense into history. I had this whole thing worked up on the computer, and as luck would have it, maybe fools with computers knows, got ready to print it out where I could do the segment, and computer locked up and lost all my notes and all that. So we're going to try to wing it. The first thing it says here, if you're following along, you don't have to show it, but maybe they'll follow along. Go to bad Frank Phillips, Google him, go to Wikitree, and go down through there, and it tells you, the person starts off by telling his mom and dad about his dad getting killed in the Civil War and stuff like that. Goes on and tells about his brother, Jesse James. Well, there was not only Jesse James Phillips, there was Frank James Phillips. And Franklin James is Frank Phillips' son that is on the monument there in Pike County. We've covered it before. Franklin James Phillips Jr. Yeah. And he got killed in the line of duty as a deputy sheriff. A lot of people think that's Frank Phillips when they see Franklin Phillips up there. That's not Frank Phillips that was brought the Hatfields back from West Virginia and that killed Jim Vance and Bill Dipsey. That's not the same one. That's his son. But we'll go over that in a minute, because she makes a comment about Jesse James and so forth. Guys, right here on the first part of it, it says bad Frank was a deputy sheriff, a freelance gunman, a logger, an outlaw. Well, we know he was a deputy sheriff, but a freelance gunman, a logger, and an outlaw. Now, once again, you can look at your sources, and your sources is going to do nothing more than take you back to a bunch of books that Sheila and I have corrected on the other side, and we got some more corrections to do. It's sad, because, you know, some of these books was wrote in 2012 after the mini-series come out. Some of the books was wrote in 2017. One of them, Mr. Tom Dotson's book, they contribute a lot of stuff to Tom Dotson's, and he's got a blog. A lot of the information that they copied there goes back to a blog that he's got. What nonsense that is. Let's hold on a minute. There are movie theaters letting out next door. You can pause it. We're located right downtown next to the movie theater, behind City Hall and in front of the courthouse. So it's sometimes gets busy.
A little busy, yeah.
So once again, when you see these sources, don't take that as the gospel. That's simply something that somebody can say, well, that's where I got this or that. You know what would have been nice is where it says a freelance gunman, a logger, a outlaw, or any of this stuff that I'm gonna cover down through here. Show us proof. You know, Sheila and I can't show you proof of something that don't exist. We can't show it to you. Now, the things that we have all over the museum that some people like to comment about is nothing but evidence, nothing but makes the case. It makes the case for us. We can prove our case through documents, court records, death and birth certificates, on and on and on. But when you speak this stuff into history on these videos and you say we're doing this research and we're doing this, no, you're not. I'm sorry, but you're not doing research. You're copying off Wikitree. That's not research. That's the internet that somebody has wrote something in there, now you're speaking it into history. That's not evidence. That's not research. You want to show research when you say these things, show us the deed. And let's get down here to it. It goes on. It says Frank Phillips was born so-and-so, and look on there at all them little green marks. See source 1, 2, 15. When you go there, you're going to click on Tom Dotson's book, Lisa Alter's book. Lisa Alter, she's right up there with Altina Waller. Okay, I'm getting this already, but you know, guys, if you know anything about the Feud history, and I know, because I hear from some of these people, Sheila and I do,
We sure do.
and I know there's Feudist researchers out there, historians out there, that knows we know what we're talking about in this respect, and how people, and these books that we're referring to, some of these books are about as credible as, Frank and the Siblings, and then it goes on down here to say that Frank and Nancy, it says Frank bought land after 1887 in Pikeville, Kentucky, in the midst of the Hatfield-McCoy feud. Now it says that he bought land. It would have been nice right there. We can show you some land deeds over there. Got a bunch on my desk we haven't even put up yet. We can show you deeds where Preacher Ains Hatfield, his deed to his property, and different ones. So if he bought land and you're doing research and you're doing this video talking about what a good investigator you are, show us. So we don't have to go try to find it. Because see, we can't find it. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. That means we can't find it. But if we can't find it, and you're not showing it, then you're speaking it into history. Ever how that is. Sheila showed me the sign.
I showed you once, yeah.
I can't remember. But anyway, you're speaking it into history. Show us where he bought land. Show us how much land he owned. It would be so helpful when you're doing these videos to show proof. It was during this time that Nancy Hatfield moved in with him, the wife of John C. Hatfield, who had remarried in bigamy after John C. had fled. This person says on this video that John C. left Nancy Hatfield, and simply not true. Let's go with the evidence. Let's go with what happened. First time we've ever heard it, and it's just been written. And you know, I didn't even look at Wikitree to see when this was updated. It tells you on there somewhere last time it was updated, when this was added to it, and so forth.
Maybe down towards the bottom.
No, I think it's toward the top. But either way, I've done got sidetracked now.
Sorry, you're talking about
Nancy left Johnsey after Cap Hatfield, Jim Vance, and Tom Wallace, one, the other, or all three, shot her brother, Jeff McCoy, after he swam across the Tug River and got to the other side, and they shot him in the back while he was climbing up the riverbank. And that is when they'd already killed her dad before she was ever born.
Yeah.
And now they've killed her brother. That's when she left Johnsey and went to Frank Phillips. You can say, you can put anything in the history. You can believe or not believe what I'm telling you right now. You know, if you knew this person that gives a lot of this out, that calls himself a historian, you can tell by the same print when he writes about Devil Anse that his service was ambiguous. He returned to the homeland. And you can see the same writing here, and I'll show you later on in this story if I don't lose my spot and forget, because like I said, I've lost my computer notes. This person says that Nancy and Frank was charged with bigamy and adultery in 1891. Okay, that should be easy enough. We got the year. Should be easy enough to prove. Now, Sheila and I's got thousands of documents here. We don't have that one. It may very well exist. If it does, it'd be nice if next time they do a video and they have a document like that, or they want to make an allegation like that, it would be nice to say, hey guys, here's that little bald-headed fella down there. We'll show him now. Here's our documentation. Here's where they were charged with adultery. Here's where they were charged with bigamy. I don't know that they was. I don't know that they wasn't. As of right now, there's no proof to it. Right, Sheila?
Right.
That we have seen or found. That doesn't mean we haven't overlooked it. We missed it. Doesn't mean that it don't exist. But if it does exist and you're going to speak it into history, you're going to say that Frank Phillips and Nancy was charged with bigamy or adultery or whatever it was. It would be nice to show us a document instead of putting 2, 5, and 1. Now you click on 2, 5, and 1. I know 2 is Tom Dotson's book or his blog. I know what 2 is because it's all through here. Tom Dotson's a sensationalist, well-educated man. Don't want to take nothing away from him, a whole lot. Well-intelligent man. And if his investigative skills was as good as his putting stuff out there, he could have really done something with this Hatfield McCoy stuff. But in order to write a book and put stuff out there, he just, I don't know. It's simply not true. Anybody that's read his books, first of all, he says there's no feud, but I'm on Frank Phillips right now. Let's continue on. Says that Frank and Nancy was charged with bigamy. Now, or adultery. The feuding led him to leave that home. They're saying here that in 1887 that Frank Phillips bought land in Pikeville, Kentucky. And in the midst of the Hatfield McCoy feud, the feuding led him to leave his home and head to Peter Creek to avoid some of the conflict headed his way as the McCoys tried to pin 2 murders on him. And that's got 2 beside of it. Hold right there. There's a 2. That 2 represents Mr. Tom Dotson, his book or his blog. So Tom Dotson has written that into history. We've never heard that before. Does it make sense to you? Let's use common sense until we see a document where he fled because he was being accused of 2 murders. The McCoys were accusing one of their allies one of their #1 allies, their friend, Frank Phillips. The McCoys are accusing him of murdering 2 people. First we've ever heard that, written in the history right there. Written in the history on Wikitree, spoken into history on these people's video. I've never mentioned these people's video, and they've never mentioned ours, but we both refer back to each other, so I'm sure that most people knows who we're talking about, but it's getting about time to have to mention them. And if you guys want to watch it, you know, I quit watching the other videos because they're so incorrect on the Hatfield McCoy stuff that when I see these other stories, I think, oh, that sounds interesting. And then I'm thinking, well, if I watch it and they're incorrect, how will I know? How will I know? If you got a reputation, you should stick with it. Your reputation is worth more than trying to put out more and more videos. Your reputation is what people will look at one day. Now, we don't have that many viewers, I know that.
That's
but
okay.
One day, it's in history. It's out there in videos. And we've got it in other places that will be in videos. People look at what you're putting out. Not how many you're putting out, because we put out videos all the time. You know, it's not easy. I used to say in court, I'd be on the stand, they'd say, how do you remember that? How do you remember this? It's easy. Tell the truth. It's not hard to remember the truth.
Yeah.
It's not hard to remember something if it's correct. During this time, Nancy had moved in with Frank. Okay, I'm just going to take my time, guys. I'm not going to rush on these videos. If you guys are in a hurry, like I said, these are more for me and for history than anything. And I've had a habit in the past of rushing, trying, because I know people don't like to stick with these videos for a long time.
Yeah,
but whether they watch them or not, it will be there for the ones that do want to. Securing a divorce. They supported their family. You guys can really read this as well as I can. They supported their family with Frank's successful timbering business. Frank Phillips, guys, 2023, 160 years later, and we're finding out that Frank Phillips was in the timbering business. Damn! Ain't that history? It's okay, girl. It's okay, girl. She gets excited.
Yeah.
Explanation point there. That's what I meant. Frank Phillips had a successful timbering business. Isn't it funny that Devil Anse was in timbering business, Randall McCoy in timbering business, Perry Klein in timbering business? Frank Phillips is now in timbering business. No doubt he was in a conflict with Devil Anse or somebody over some wood somewhere. That's what you're going to read about next or here. But now listen to that right there, because I'm going to bring this back to you in a minute. I remember down at the bottom I was reading this.
Okay.
They supported their family with Frank's successful timbering business. The household had 11. They go on and on, talk about that, Frank's activities. Frank's activities and family heritage made him a wealthy landowner in both Kentucky and Virginia, claiming several thousands of acres in both places. They're saying Frank Phillips was a wealthy man. Frank Phillips was a deputy sheriff and a state law enforcement officer, what we would call today with statewide law enforcement authority, a state trooper, state police. That's what he did, guys. Wasn't a gunslinger. He wasn't even a bounty hunter like they say. He wasn't a bounty hunter. He was a deputy sheriff and a law enforcement officer when he was going to West Virginia and bringing the Hatfields back. He collected the bounty. The bounty was there. And I've said it many a time, as Walt Hatfield says on the miniseries, Frank Phillips, he'll not collect no bounty from me. Well, he sure as hell did. He sure got a $100 bill right over on one of those walls as the documents. There's your documents. That's what we prove. I wish I could spot it out real fast because I'd show you, but I don't have to. We've showed it in one of our videos before, but that's what you show. If we hadn't shown it before, I'd show it now. but we have shown it. So we know that it exists on our walls.
Yeah,
That's what you call presenting evidence. So, he wasn't a bounty hunter. He wasn't any of these other things. He was a deputy sheriff. He wanted to be the sheriff of Pike County one day. That was his goal in life, was to be the sheriff of Pike County. But his family heritage made him a wealthy landowner in both Kentucky and Virginia. Now listen, not West Virginia. Remember, in 1863, Virginia split off and become West Virginia and Virginia. So you're telling us now that Frank skipped out and went through West Virginia all the way to Virginia to have his business, or to do on several thousand of acres of property back in that day when you had to ride a horse? You can believe that if you want to. I can tell you I got a whole head full of hair, and you can see I don't now. I don't have my hat on. Guys, he from his family heritage, Frank Phillips was a wealthy man from his family heritage. Up there at the top paragraph, his dad was killed in the Civil War. Says he didn't know his father. I don't know if he did or not. I wasn't there. I'm not going to tell you something I don't have nothing to prove that he did or he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So let's not speak it into history. But they said that he didn't know his father. Well, he didn't know his father, but they're saying here, you see how things are wrote into history? Can you read that right there, just in case you didn't go to your thing, to Google? There it is. His heritage, family heritage, made him a wealthy landowner. We're going to come back to that in a minute. Frank knew he was trouble. That's what it says. Frank knew he was trouble. He referred to himself as Bad Frank as often as those around him did. That's paragraph. That's 2. Source is 2. Remember who number 2 is? Number 2 is Thomas Dodson. That's from his book. So that's who they're giving credit for this. 2017, I think, is when, I could be wrong. I think Tom wrote his book in 2017. Wow, that's a lot of knowledge to know from way back then. I'm Frank Phillips. That he went around everybody, hey, I'm bad Frank Phillips. Hey, I'm bad Frank. Hey, I'm bad Frank. Who the hell does that, people? Who in the world goes around and tells people that? Do you believe that? I don't. According to, he referred to himself as Bad Frank as often as those around him did. Though apparently a very likable and kind person when sober, he was crazy when he drank. Well, I don't know how many people there's ever been drunk or rowdy, except for Sheila, probably not. But if you drink enough, you're going. That's common. But let's go on. He was crazy when drunk, which was every weekend, and later in life included week-long binges. Oh, there's number 2 again. The source, number 2. Week-long binges. A wealthy man from his inheritance, which he had no inheritance because he didn't even know his dad. A wealthy man, but yet, because he had this prospering timber business, but yet he stays drunk. First he stays drunk on the weekends, every weekend. Every weekend he stays drunk. And then he finally got till he stays drunk on week-long binges, weeks at a time. Got drunk, but well, on thousands and thousands of acres of property, but he stayed drunk. Can't have it both ways. Anybody that's ever known an alcoholic or people, it's hard to do it both ways. Hard to be a drunk and a hard worker at the same time. If you're a drunk, you don't work. If you're a worker, you ain't got time to drink on week-long binges. According to first-hand family oral history. That's one of the comments, oral history. That's one of the comments from that so-called historian that they've got over there in Logan County. He calls himself a historian, and that's his language. That's his language. First-hand family oral history. And I'll tell you where he said it at. Just come back to me. I can't remember what I did 5 minutes ago, but I can remember a year ago or 2 years ago. He wrote out about devil ants. He said it was oral history that devil ants returned home, that he got a furlough and he returned home to the home guard when devil ants deserted. His Civil War paper says deserted. But this gentleman here, this so-called historian, which I've never named, so he's nobody that I've named yet, but it's probably coming out because we got a whole list of stuff on him that's incorrect that he wrote into history. Guys, you can't call yourself a historian and take sides. You can't call yourself a historian and take sides one way or the other. Tell it like it is. Tell the truth. Show proof. Show proof at every chance that you can. Not sources. Not something that somebody wrote in a book 4 years ago or 2 years ago or said in a blog 20 minutes ago. According to first-hand family oral history. First-hand family oral history, 160 years ago. Where did this person get this first-hand oral history at? Where in the world? Who's living that told this person firsthand? He got it firsthand. I don't believe it, okay? I won't harp on it. I just don't. That's a lie, okay? When you see comments like that, believe them if you want. Frank rode with the James and Younger gang in his younger years. This seems to be supported by his name of one of his sons, Jesse James Phillips. Well, he forgot that he also named one of his sons Frank James Phillips. He had Frank and Jesse. Does that mean he rode with them? I can think of all kinds of people that names their children after movie stars. I don't mean they starred in a movie with them on TV or in the big screen. I don't mean they knew the person or something like that, run with them. So that's written into history. And I've heard that before. We've heard that, but we've never commented on it because there's no proof to it. It's spoken into history. There's no bank robberies where Frank Phillips was with Jesse James. There's no court documents. There's nothing like that would back up that rumor. I don't care. I don't care if he served with Jesse James, run with him or not. I don't make a hoot to me or Sheila. Yeah. But that right there is written in the history on here. And by this person on that video a few minutes ago, spoke it in the history. And then somebody else is going to hear it. Somebody else is going to hear it. And that's how it all gets started. That's how it keeps going. Just because you name your children after somebody doesn't mean you run in the gang with them. Frank's career back then, Frank's ambition was to be a police officer, be a law enforcement officer. I'm not saying he walked on water. I'm not saying he done everything right. I don't know his life that good. But I know when they say that he was a gunslinger, a gun for hire, when they say he was this. He took up with Randall McCoy because Randall McCoy got done dirty by the West Virginia Hatfields. He took up for him because nobody else would. And he couldn't get a whole lot done. And Frank Phillips was there the next morning when they burnt the cabin down, and he saw the two children. This person here, it's not part of the story here, but they say a few minutes ago it's a couple of weeks later after the cabin burning. No, hell no, it's not a couple of weeks later. It was 6 days later. They killed Jim Vance on January the 8th, 1888. 7 days later after the cabin massacre. Not 2 weeks later. How can you say you're a researcher, say you're a history buff, say you're anything? Guys, these 2 weeks instead of 7 days, that's double. Instead of 7 days, that's 14 days. A lot can happen in 14 days. In 14 days, you probably had the indictments back. I don't know. I have to look and see. I've just come to my mind. But that could have been, Jim Vance would have been on the indictments then. He wasn't on the indictments when they indicted him for burning the cabin. He wasn't on the indictments because he had already been killed. You don't indict a dead person. So when you say 2 weeks, it can really have a bearing on something when you're referring to history. I know to some people that may seem minute. To a real historian, that you should, if you take history serious, it means something. He was an opportunist, whether for good or bad. He had a reputation. He had been indicted in 3 different states for various crimes, but never served time. Look there at the top, and then look at that little 2 in parentheses there. 2 is the source.
Okay.
Sorry about that, guys. The battery went dead. Again, it was going to be a short video, but
That's all right.
for anybody that's true historians or really gets into the Hatfields and McCoys, this is what you get. This is, I know I drift, but it's
That's okay.
the information's there if you want to find it. He had been indicted in 3 different states for various crimes. What crimes? What had he been indicted in these states for? For various crimes? Wouldn't it be nice if a person's giving you this kind of information and they're telling you this? Wouldn't it be nice to say, well, he was indicted for this, this, and this? And then you know what'd be nice? 3 different states? Is there even 1? 2? Much less 3 that we can see? Wouldn't it be nice if you tell somebody, hey, he was indicted in 3 different states for crimes? Tell us the crimes and show us the document. Show us the indictments. Show us the warrants. Show us the proof. He had been indicted in 3 different states for various crimes, but never served no time. No, never did serve no time, because there would probably be a record of that, wouldn't there? There'd probably be a record of that if the person had served time. Guys, we can't prove what don't exist. Me and Sheila, I love to stand up here and show you a document and say, hey, here's this. We're not the ones claiming that Frank Phillips was indicted in 3 different states. We're not the ones claiming that he was wanted in 3 different states, that he committed crimes. We're not the one claiming that. But who is claiming that, which, again, it comes from 2, number 2. That's evidently in his book or in his blog. It'd be nice to see these 3 states. What 3 states is it? What 3 states is it that Frank Phillips committed crimes in and has indictments? He had been indicted in 3 different states. Let them see that.
Under that, so I can.
Indicted in 3 different states. That's a new one on me. But never served no time. His connection to the powerful Pike County men, Colonel John Dills, helped him out of any situation he got himself into. Number 2 again. Now, if you've ever read Mr. Dotson's book, he wants to copy off of, one time he said that she agrees with him, Altina Waller, but Altina Waller wrote her book before Tom Dotson did, so it would be more like he agrees with her. But in his book, he wants to blame everything on the Pikeville elite, as he calls them. Pikeville elite. It was all about business. It was all, just like Altina Waller, he got it from her. He copied her book, and he says everything was economical, social and economical changes. Nothing to do with Civil War, nothing to do with a pig, nothing to do with the love affair, nothing to do with moonshine, nothing to do with killing Randall McCoy's brother, slaughtering 3 of their at the tree and burning the cabin down. No, Pikeville elite, that's the problem. Rich people wanting to get richer. Believe what you want. Never served no time. Dills was Frank's guardian in Civil War, despite the lore surrounding the legend. Few sources back up the stories of cold murders, many of which were actually attributed to the McCoys. See that number 2 right there?
Trying to get in that area.
Yeah. Says that the folklore says that the stories, many of which were actually attributed to the McCoys. I wonder what McCoys. Because Tom Dotson's the one that said Randall McCoy never led nobody nowhere. He led them to Grapevine, the Bad Old Grapevine, not like you seen in the movie History Channel where he's drunk and running in the trees. He didn't drink. He was not a partaker. He didn't run in the trees. He was not drunk at the hanging. Got a picture in there, sober as a judge at the hanging.
Yep.
Didn't happen. That's History Channel. Just like, I don't know why Tom talks about Kevin Costner and the History Channel and all this and that not being correct, or Dean King or anybody for that matter, because he sure has room for improvement. Actually attributed to the McCoys. Did Randall McCoy ever talk? Did Randall McCoy ever talk to the media? Attributed to the McCoys? I don't understand. The worst that can be solidly attributed to him is the attempt to kill Rebel Bill. He was known as a freelance gunman. Right there. Known as a freelance gunman. Guys, where? Show us some documents. Can we have a document where he was gun for hire? What was that movie back when? Gun for Hire or something?
I think that was the title.
That was the title. Remember when I was a kid, I used to watch a Western. Have Gun Will Travel. That was the name of it. Have Gun Will Travel. There you go, Gun for Hire. Maybe that's where they got that movie at. That might have been after Frank Phillips' life. Who knows? Frank was appointed deputy sheriff in Pike County 1887, Pike County Sheriff by Basil Hatfield. This is number 2 again. It was this role that is best known for, as he included his foray into West Virginia to capture many of the Hatfields. His activities nearly caused a war between Kentucky and West Virginia. Wow. Frank Phillips almost caused the war. Had nothing to do with Devil Anse Hatfield coming across the Tug River, burning cabin down and killing 2 more of the children and beating the wife. Had nothing to do with tying 3 boys up to a tree naked and assassinating them. It was Frank Phillips's fault. I'm being facetious, guys. I'm being silly. I'm sorry. I shouldn't act like that. But can you read that and tell?
You're trying to make a point.
I'm trying to make a point of how people's writing stuff in the history, and the majority of the people believe it because they see it here and it says source and they automatically assume it's true when it's nothing more than somebody sitting at their computer. And I won't go there. I was going to say something, but they're not thinking clearly when they write this garbage. His activities nearly caused a war between Kentucky and West Virginia. Frank was recruited by Perry Klein to gather a posse and capture the Hatfields after 3 of the McCoy sons had killed Ellis and Hatfield 5 years earlier. Guys, Randall McCoy tried to seek justice from day 1. He run all over Pikeville trying to seek justice. This person here says that they didn't do nothing for 5 years. If you go back and look through the court records, we're going to get to it eventually. But you can go through the court records. There's all kinds. My great-grandfather was charged with shooting, carrying a gun, concealed gun, and shooting at another person. Lark McCoy in here during those years was charged with shooting at another person. I don't think they're shooting at each other. I think they're probably shooting at West Virginia Hatfields. But there was stuff that happened during 5 years. It just took 5 years to get something done. You got to remember Perry Klein eventually became the youngest sheriff ever to serve in Pike County. And he was also the jailer in Pike County. So wouldn't that have been some of his duties during that time? If there was indictment warrants, and there's indictments, there's 20 of them indicted. Wouldn't it be his job to seek justice? And if Frank Phillips is a Pike County deputy sheriff, say, hey Frank, here's some warrants on West Virginia Hatfields. See if you can pick them up. That's his job. Several skirmishes occurred leading to the burning of the cabin. In the famous massacre event, Frank led his posse to Logan County, bent on rounding up Hatfields. On 9 January 1888, succeeding and bringing in 9 in a series of bloody battles. Phillips had led similar raids, which led him to being wanted in West Virginia. His relentless pursuit of the Hatfields made him one of the few men Devil Anse Hatfield feared. Sheriff Basil Hatfield didn't like Frank's raids and petitioned and succeeded in removing his station as deputy sheriff. Frank continued his raids. Guys, if you know anything about the Hatfield-McCoy feud, Basil Hatfield let Frank Phillips go after he started bringing some of them back. He let them go as a Pike County deputy sheriff. Now, Basil Hatfield is my great-great-uncle. Basil Hatfield was Preacher Anse Hatfield's brother. And they are also the first cousins to Devil Anse Hatfield over on the West Virginia side. So did Basil have some kind of loyalty to Devil Anse? Sounds like it. Sounds like it. Unlike Preacher Anse. Preacher Anse was as honest as the day is long and as true blue, and he'd go either party. Whatever the truth was is how he went. But it don't sound like Basil was that way. Basil fired Frank Phillips. But it says here that Frank Phillips continued with his raids. Really? I wonder how he could do that. Because see, up until he brought those 9 people back from West Virginia and they filed papers to go all the way to the Supreme Court, you could still go to West Virginia. You could still go. It never been ruled on by the Supreme Court. There was no ruling. So it wasn't illegal to go to West Virginia and bring people back, or Kentucky and take people. It wasn't illegal. There was no precedence on it at the time. Okay. Now, after he brought the 9 people back and they filed the papers, it went to Supreme Court. The Supreme Court says, hey, you can't go over there no more. A police officer can't. You got to get a governor's warrant. You got to extradite them back. But guess what? Frank Phillips continued his raids. He sure did. He sure did. He continued them as a Kentucky state trooper, a Kentucky state police officer. Simon Buckner, the 32nd governor of Kentucky, had given Frank Phillips statewide authority, law enforcement authority, and said, go serve these warrants, go bring them back. And he did. He went over and killed Jim Vance, killed Bill Dempsey. He brought 9 other ones back. Frank lived up to his nickname time after time. Final instance, he quarreled with a friend about a woman and threatened to stab him. The friend warned him to back off, and in the end, the friend shot him through the hip. Really? Really? Because the story we've always heard is that they were in a card game. They were in a card game. And him and Ransom Bray, his friend, and one of his deputies, got in an argument, and it turned into a gunfight, and Bray shot him in the hip or the leg over a card game. Says here, over a woman. Over a woman. I've also heard over the years that he owed him money, that Ransom Bray owed Frank, or Frank owed him. But it couldn't be Frank owing him. Frank couldn't owe him money, right? Because Frank had thousands and thousands and thousands of land. And he was a wealthy man because he inherited it from his dead father. I'm not going to read some of this, guys. Died of his wounds, notably Frank's wife, the Hellcat Nancy. You know, we covered Nancy McCoy once. Sheila done a story on her. And, you know, we was up there at Hillbilly Days or something one time, and they was doing this reenactment. And there was this guy come by, and they had these reenactors up there, and they was acting like Rosanna and Nancy, and this old man come by, and he said, boy, that Nancy was a Hellcat, wasn't she? And I don't know who he was or nothing else. We've been gone from Pike County for a while, but evidently somebody else must have heard that, or that's what they nicknamed her before. But never before have we ever heard Nancy McCoy, or Nancy Phillips, after she got married again, was only married to 2 guys, John C. Hatfield, Frank Phillips. I don't know how much of a Hellcat she could have been, guys. Let me read you this last part. I remember reading this a while ago. Well, this is number 2. She never saw the inheritance. She died at 36 years old. She never saw her inheritance because of shady lawyers who sold her out to each other. She did what she could to fight the situation, going so far as to maintain a bootlegging business to support her family. Now, guys, guess what number's beside that? Guess who wrote that last paragraph there? And this gentleman says, and I'm going to call him out once again. This is Tom Dotson, number 2. And she supported her business by bootlegging. Nancy Phillips, Frank Phillips' wife, was a bootlegger. So, how do we know that? As a police officer, how do we know that? There has to be court records on it, right? She's had to have been picked up on it. She's had to be charged, indicted, warrants maybe, summonses. Has to be some kind of proof there because he says it either in his book or in his blog. So surely, it's okay, girl. So get down. So surely it's true. That's our watchdog.
Yeah, she's a good one too, son. You can't sneeze without her knowing it.
No. That battery went dead a while ago and beeped, and when it beeped, she went crazy.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm not going to bore you any longer. That camera's probably going to kick off again.
Yeah.
It was just a sad story. When I watch another video, I don't even watch other, you know, this I think it was number 5 here. That was in my notes earlier. There was one of those sources that says that this guy had covered 10 family feuds and he had contributed to this story. I've said it in one of our videos before. I don't even read other people's books. I don't listen to other people's feud stories. I don't want to discuss nobody else's history or family affairs.
It's not to be mean, though.
Not to be mean.
Right.
I just, with my memory, you can tell I don't have the best memory anymore. And it's getting worse. And that's the whole point of making these videos. I seen what happened. Sheila, I'm going to get Sheila to post a video. I'll show you my mother in the next video she posts.
Yep.
And what happens, what can happen to you when you forget your own children. And, you know, that's it, hereditary. And then if you care for somebody that's got dementia and stuff, things like that, you're more apt to get it. We wrote a book on it. Sheila and I did on dementia. We spent the last 5-6 years with Mother, and sad situation. But I can see myself. I can see some of those traits. Guys, I thought I was done, but I want to add one little segment here. First of all, she can close in there, sources. That's on Wikitree. There's your sources once again. If you went to the Wikitree to Frank Phillips, you're seeing all this just like I am here. You can go down there and see where these stories come from. Tom Dotson, how bad was bad Frank Phillips. Altina, or Lisa Alter, Blood Feud. Ancestry.com. Jay Shepard, bad Frank Phillips, is at it again. Pike County Tourism blog, referencing a clipping from the Logan County Banner, 11 September 1895. Now, that's what it says. I want you to look at it here so I'm correct. Jay Shepard, he's with the Pike County Tourism, and there's several times, I haven't corrected him yet, but we've got a whole list that we're going to be doing on this pretty soon. And Jay Shepard says that, referencing a clipping from the Logan County Banner, 11 September 1895. Now look here at the bottom here. I want to show you. Let's click, or if you're on your computer at home, click on it. But watch here. We're going to click on this first one where it's made reference. Oh, okay. There's a picture of Frank Phillips. Oh, crap.
Snapples.
I went too far.
That's okay. Just take your time.
Yeah, we got it.
No big deal.
Because this is going to be very interesting to you. I'm not going to do that a lot because I'll probably do the same thing again. My hand shakes.
That's okay.
And I hit the wrong things. But let's click on, that was 12.0. Here's 12.1. And there's Frank again. Let's click on 12.2, and here he is talking about Devil Anse had retaliated against the 3 McCoy boys for killing his brother. Here's 12.3. He's talking about the massacre at the cabin. Here's 12.4. And he's talking about Frank led his posse to Logan County. Now, there is all the ones dealing with Jay Shepherd. But yet, he's going to be talking about referencing a clipping from the Logan County Banner, 11 September 89. He's referencing a Logan Banner newspaper, supposedly. But did you see the newspaper anywhere in there? No. I've never seen this newspaper article that has that from the Logan Banner. And we've got several from the Logan Banner. And if it's out there, that's great. But wouldn't that have been a nice place to have put it? If you're going to... Now, we've seen pictures of Frank Phillips. We don't have to see more pictures of Frank, especially 2 of the same picture, to make it look like there's more sources there. There's more to see. Same picture twice. That's one. Let's look right here below Jay Shepherd. First-hand knowledge. Walter Quinton. First-hand knowledge. Somebody here has got first-hand knowledge, but do you see any sources? Do you see any references? There's no numbers there, nothing you can click on to other than his name, unless they want you to read his entire book, if that's what it is. Then the next one, the railroad comes. Great feuds in history, 10 of the liveliest disputes ever. Now this is where they're making reference to some of their information on bad Frank Phillips. But yet, there's nothing there. There's nothing to reference. Then here's one, bad Frank at Hatfield's and McCoy fame. Hatfield McCoy feud, Wikipedia. Wikipedia is the same as Wikitree. Put whatever you want to in there. And guess what? Guess who they got some of their history from? Well, that's a good place to get it. The History Channel's Hatfield McCoy miniseries. Anybody that believes in that garbage?
Shoot, sorry.
Okay, boy. I heard a kid go by. It's okay, girl.
Good job, sweetheart.
Guys, it's Fred and Sheila. Sheila, you got anything?
No. Are we ending it now? I'm not going to go ahead and do my
Yeah.
spiel on that. Okay.
Go ahead.
Thanks for watching. Please